Well, I don't know how many talks I've been to by Ian, GM3SEK. They go back quite a long way. And when we discussed the title, I had in mind golden-plated decibels. But the game of decibels is probably more akin to the amateur radio Game of Thrones. So without further ado, Ian, GM3SEK.
Oh, thank you, John. Very good afternoon. I must begin with an apology for not having been here a year ago when I found I couldn't talk. However, I've learning from our political leaders, and I've got something to get me through. But if you find that I start talking about signals being strong and stable, then please stop me, shoot me. Right.
With pleasure.
Yeah. Oh, okay. First of all, could I have a show of hands, please, about who I'm talking to try and be able to pitch it at the technical level? Any foundation licensees or people studying? Okay, that's kind of cut out the bottom. Intermediate? Yep. Yeah. Okay, and the rest of you. Okay, some of you in that case are going to have to spend the next half hour noticing where I simplified things, and otherwise we won't get through it. But right, yeah, it isn't quite you play or you die, but what I want to talk about is the way that we use decibels as a tool to help our thinking about what we're trying to do, because it's out of that comes the whole gamut of things that we can do to make our station performance better. And if you start to think in terms of decibels, it helps. It focuses the mind. So, first of all, what are we calling VHF and UHF DX? I think most of us here know, but there's a few things to be pointed out, I think. First of all, going 100 and more years back, DX is an abbreviation for something that's some combination of distance and difficulty, because everything was trying to get the maximum possible distance in the very, very early days, and it was difficult. On HF, DX means more about rarity now. Propagation's important, but rarity is more important on HF. But on VHF, distance and difficulty still holds true. We're not doing it because it's easy. We're doing it because it's hard, because it's challenging. And second thing is, it's unique to amateur radio. Nobody else is trying to do this daft thing of operating on the VHF bands in much the same way as people do on the HF bands, potentially using weak signals with skilled operators on both ends and with a very, very uncertain radio channel. That's the challenge that we take on. Nobody else is doing it, so we've got to make our own way. The other big difference from HF DX is, on HF, if the band closes, you turn the band switch, you press the button, you move to another band where there is propagation. We don't do that. We stay on the band and we make it happen. And that's a very, very different attitude of mind. So we do what's necessary to be able to work stations. And making DX happen is more than just trying hard. So it often involves weak signals because, and I can't say this too often, that if there's a band opening and the signals you were struggling to work last night come way up out of the noise and RS9, there is more DX beyond that. So it's always the weak signals that are our focus, provided, as Alwyn has so eloquently said, provided that we can handle the strong signals or ignore the strong signals as well. So it needs some special operating skills, and it needs some technical understanding, and that, I think, is what does it for me. It's that blend of things that you can do. Spend time building your station, improving your station, and then check it out on the air in ways that need different operating skills. So, right. First of all, what I mean by the game of decibels. Then I'm going to try and address this question about what is an extra dB worth, and that's a controversy as old as amateur radio, or at least for as long as amateur radio has known about decibels. Where to find extra dBs? This is the program for station improvement, if you like, and then where to look next beyond this talk for further information, and the stacks of it, of course. What you won't find in this talk is any maths. Yeah. If we'd known, then if we'd known about the content of each other's lectures, Alwyn and I would probably have switched, because mine's easier. Yeah. All I'm saying is, quite simply, if you can count money, you can count decibels. It's just arithmetic. So, what it means. What's a decibel? It's the currency we use to talk and think about signal strengths, noise levels, gains and losses. So, taking that example, signal strength in dB relative to something minus noise level in dB relative to the same thing is the signal to noise ratio in dB. So, you know, we're just adding and taking away. We're not doing logs and things. We're just doing sums and takeaways. So, here's the problem then. We're not trying to climb a mountain. We're trying to build a mountain of positive dBs that will bring signals up out of the noise. And so you build up every dB that counts to your advantage. Why do we need to do this? Because it wasn't a mountain, it's an iceberg. There is this enormous thing called path loss, which will rob you of most of your signal strength. And it's about here that we start to think about, well, okay, yes, but why decibels? In the middle, if you like, on this analogy, is the noise level, and you've got your head above water or below, in crude terms. Why do we need decibels? Well, look at the size of the numbers. Look at the size of transmitted signals. They're large. If you dump RF power into a dummy load resistor, you can feel 10 watts. You can burn your fingers on 10 watts under the right circumstances. You certainly can with 100 watts, and with 1,000 watts you can power an electric fire. So, okay, these are on a scale that we can all understand. Received signals, on the other hand, okay, that is an unimaginably small number. And you think that's a weak signal? Wrong. Even an S9 plus 20 dB signal has that many zeros following the decimal point. If you want a weak signal, this is a sort of reverse Crocodile Dundee thing. That is a weak signal. That is down in the noise. So, okay. If you can't understand that one, what chance do we have with that one? The only option that's left is to fool ourselves and write it down a different way, in a way that we think we can understand. So, how do we deal with unimaginably small numbers? And also large numbers beyond those transmitted power levels. And the answer is we convert them into decibels. So 10, 100, 1,000 watts, we change to plus 10, plus 20, plus 30 dB above a watt. That hasn't helped us an awful lot, but it really starts to help when you change those numbers into minus 100 dBW and minus 170 dBW. That's probably the largest negative number you'll ever have to deal with, minus 170 something, and it feels like you can understand that. If you're satisfactorily fooled, okay, you can start to think about it. You can do arithmetic instead of just floundering about with these numbers where you can't remember if you've written down the right number of zeros even. So that's essentially why we use decibels. And as I said, you can add and subtract them like counting money. So this question about what is an extra dB really worth? How hard does it justify us working to actually increase our advantage by an extra dB? And the answer to that, I think, comes down to how much do you care about the result? Yep. There's a thing called a link budget diagram, which on a dB scale, you start with the transmitted power level, you lose something in feeder loss, you gain something back in antenna gain. You haven't gained any power, but you've gained stronger signals by herding the radiation into the direction you want to point at. That then is your effective radiated power. There is then this unimaginably large path loss, resulting in a very small power level arriving at the antenna, still in space. An antenna is a device for converting electromagnetic fields into electric currents. So somewhere up here, you get the signal at the feed point, you lose some again at feeder loss, and that's your received power level that's arriving at the input to the receiver. And then you can play games with that. If the signal level arriving is higher than the noise level, then for the most part result happiness. If it's actually the receiver power level that's moved down, the noise level has stayed the same because the path loss has got larger, QSB in other words, then you're going to have to work a lot harder to copy the signal. If the receiver power level sinks below the noise level, then result misery, or you're going to have to work a great deal harder yet. Okay, the link budget diagram is a reasonable way of doing it, but I think we'll probably, let's go back to the iceberg. Which are the important decibels? I think in the end, they're the small change, if you like, that makes the difference between result happiness and result misery. In the original quote from Dickens, it was all about sixpence, 6 whole pennies either way per year. So we're here, piling on every extra dB that you can find, because near the noise level, 1 dB either way can make the difference between copying and not copying. Because being able to hear a signal is one thing, being able to copy is a threshold effect where somehow you or your software or whatever locks on, and then you can actually understand the message that's coming in. So even 1 dB either way can determine whether you're going to get that lock and how long you're going to stay in lock, how well. 3 dB can make a decisive difference in completing QSOs, because if you don't drop out of lock in understanding the signal that's coming in and decoding it, then you just make the QSO, and 3 dB can make that possible. +6, +10 dB will be dramatic. It means you can make that QSO faster, more accurately, more easily. So 6 to 10 dB is definitely worth going for. 3 dB, if you care, is going to make a difference. 1 dB at the margins. 1 dB is a lot for you. I've had, when I was doing moon bounce on 70 centimeters, I actually did increase my output power by 1 dB and got emails saying, "What have you done?" People noticed. It meant I was very weak before, but yeah, okay. But it does make the difference. So +1 to +3 dB, somewhere in there, I'm contending is well worth going for if you care about results, because you'll get noticeably better copy on weak signals. Fading signals are going to stay readable, copyable for longer, therefore, and that is what allows the QSOs to be complete without having to ask for so many repeats. And marginal QSOs, therefore, will succeed more often than they would without that +1 to +3 dB advantage. No guarantees, of course, because you don't know what the next QSO is going to bring. So it's just a matter of playing with the probabilities, tilting the odds in your favor. And that's why we try to do it. That's why we scramble for these extra dBs and fractions of a dB. So where do we look? Well, antenna gain, increase it. Feed line loss, decrease it. Receive noise level, decrease it. Transmitter power, increase it. Sight, improve it. Propagation mode, choose the best available. Transmission mode, choose the most appropriate for the propagation mode. You're perfectly at liberty to choose something that's even more difficult if that is what you want to do, of course, but I'm talking here about the hard physics of it, where if you're running 10 watts, your signal will be 10 dB weaker than if you're running 100. Now, if you want to take that as a challenge, that's absolutely fine, but let's not deny the hard physics. Okay, I'm calling these soft dBs in the sense of soft currency, that you can't trade, you can't buy things, but maybe they make life better. So don't forget about the other things which begin to affect you, because the other unique thing about amateur radio is that you and me, we are part of our station. And we can be improved as well as the hardware. So operating aids, I wish I had a chair as comfortable as all these which are filling these rooms. Station layout, more efficient. The reason for that, more comfortable, the reason for that is to clear your mind from how much your back hurts, and the brain power that you were using to think about that, you can use to try and dig the signals out of the noise. And the whole general realm of operator skills. I won't really talk much about those anymore, but we'll talk about the hard dBs. So moving on to specifics, again, we don't have much time, so all I can do is point out a few things. But the well-known fact that antennas help both transmit and receive. This was mainly aimed at this comment about bigger is better was mainly aimed at people who are just coming into this and have noticed that oh, I can buy a 3 or a 4 element Yagi from this ad in Radcom at a reasonable price. I'll put that up. Fine, it's a good starting point, but you need to start thinking bigger than that. You need to be more ambitious, even if you're not going to go right up today and buy the bigger antenna. You need to set yourself goals that are more ambitious than that. So this well-known curve, this is VE7 BQH's mammoth level playing field computation of antenna gains, and we know that gain isn't everything, but antenna gains plotted out against boom length on this is on 2 meters, and it goes down to a boom length of 1 wavelength. But I'm here to say that yeah, a 1 wavelength boom for the most part is not worth getting out of bed for. There are a few magic lengths here which make nice unit Yagis if you wish to stack them in multiples. One of them, which I think has as much to do with available and shippable lengths of tubing, one of them is about 6 meters, about 20 feet, which is why you get a little cluster here of people who are going for the 20-foot market. But the other thing to notice is, okay, there's a trend line running through this really quite clearly, and equally clearly, some Yagis are above the trend line in terms of gain, and some are below it, and some are markedly below it. And okay, there are more things to think about than gain, but gain is important. So think about these, which are top side of the trend, and find out what these are. Download the VE7 BQH data, click on these things to identify the points, and avoid those designs. As simple as that. Just choose. Choose wisely. Yeah. So I think that just about sums that up. And we don't have a great deal of time to be talking about pattern and so on, but I will come to that in a moment. Yeah, certainly start thinking bigger, at least in terms of ambitions. And yeah, just remember that, particularly if you're building it, a poor Yagi and a good Yagi, you buy the same materials in the same lengths, and the difference between a poor and a good one is where you drill the boom and what lengths you saw the elements down to. So might as well build a good one. Yeah, good designs. I'm very, very skeptical usually about designer anything, but having researched the area, I think it's fair to say that that names and call signs do count here. In no particular order except alphabetical, that there are a number of good designers, and size for size of antenna, it would be very difficult in a blind test in the proverbial shack without windows. It would be just about impossible to distinguish whose antenna is connected there. if you're in a shack without windows, with nothing but a rotator and Alwyn's noise measuring equipment, it would be very, very difficult. So any of those, they are respected for a reason. And another thing's worth mentioning is that they respect each other as well. So don't be tribal about it. There may be reasons why you like so-and-so's design rather than such and such, but don't be tribal about it. Both those two people would respect each other as well. There's one notable absentee here, which is DL6WU, who he designed the granddaddy of all the families of really good Yagis, but that was the last of the pre-computer designs. He got it right by sheer good intuition and a reflection-free chamber belonging to the German post office that was about the size of an aircraft hangar. He had the use of that so he could evaluate his designs and measure things. But time has moved on, and his designs are as good as they ever were, but it's worth going on to the next generation, I think, now. And I would very much recommend that if you've got any tools at all, then building your own Yagis, it's very satisfying to build your own, even if you copy somebody else's design, put it up, and hey, it works. So, yeah, the takeaway for now is to be ambitious. Put up the largest antennas, one way or another that you can get away with in your circumstances, which may mean the neighbours, or it may mean the risk of falling down when you're up on the hill on your own at half past 10 at night. Then that's an important constraint. But don't settle for small antennas if you can avoid doing so. Reducing feed line losses, I think most people understand that, again, it helps both transmit and receive. There's a great deal of more hidden detail in there which gets covered in computer programs and spreadsheets these days. So that's part of what I'm skating over. It subtracts from antenna gain. At high power, it wastes transmitter power in proportion to the power level that you're using. It adds to receiver noise figure. And part of the problem is that there's no sudden cliff beyond which it stops working. It just gradually, a longer and longer length of less suitable coax will gradually erode your system performance without you actually noticing. I'll skip over that for the moment, but just to move on to this warning that coax doesn't last forever, and the thing that will most commonly ruin the performance of your coax over time is corrosion of the braid, because to make itself work, coax relies very much on the contact pressure between strands of braid. This is a skin effect where RF currents flow on the outside, and in order to stay on the outside, they have to hop from strand to strand. And the contact pressure between strands of braid in the jacket of coax is frankly lousy. It relies on there being huge numbers of them in order to work at all. But when the copper gets corroded, which can happen in cable that looks perfectly okay, but over the years the jacket has become porous. Once that happens, then that contact's gone, and it deteriorates in a very slow and subtle way. So I would say, first of all, RG213, if we're being anything like serious and are not backpacking, then RG213, I think, is entry level for serious VHF and UHF DXing and contesting. There are better cables. Hardline and Heliax lasts much longer because it's got the solid outer jacket, which is immune to this braid problem. It doesn't have this braid problem, so it's dearer, it's more difficult to handle, but not that much more difficult. I've taken up, relayed twice about 50 meters of LDF5 all on my own. It's not that hard, you know. I'm not Tarzan. So think about Heliax. It's not as difficult as as people who haven't used Heliax imagine it is. And there's lots of it about second-hand, but since it has a long life, that doesn't matter. And do as I say, not as I do. I'm not as methodical as I would like to be about measuring feedline loss regularly and actually logging it. If you've got, for example, a reasonably good SWR meter, then to measure feedline loss or get an index of it, you can just put a short circuit at the far end, measure the SWR. It won't be accurate, but if nothing else changes, it should remain the same as the value that you got measuring with that equipment. So you can get indications which you can log, write down, and notice deteriorating. It's valid for that. Increasing transmitter power. The hard physics is that a 10 dB increase in transmitter power is a 10 dB increase in received signal at the other end. But so I'm not going into the area of which power section in the contest you enter, but this was mainly aimed at people who are still on the upgrade path of license. Increase transmitter power to make it easier for other people to work you. Make yourself easy to work is one of the main routes towards working more DX. Foundation 10 watts, intermediate, you're immediately allowed a 7 dB increase. And bearing in mind that I said 6 to 10 dB can be decisive in improving your QSOs, then I think the answer is fairly clear there. Full license at 100 watts is another 3 dB above intermediate, which is kind of marginal, but it's a clear 10 dB above foundation. Full license at 400 watts gives you another 6 dB over 100, and a whole 16 dB above foundation. I certainly notice these differences, particularly sort of having been running 50 watts and up in the UK activity contests from when I first moved up to Scotland and going on as I got the station working. I noticed the difference in terms of being able to attract the attention of you folks down south, and then if you turn your beams a bit, there's no problem. I could work you on 10 watts, but if I can't attract your attention at all, I need 400. It's one of the things about moving away from where the people are. So my recommendation to people who are further down the licensing ladder is upgrade if you can to take advantage of those opportunities. Okay, improving your site. Well, what can we do? We hear so many things about what's wrong with your home site, and to a degree all these things are true, but maybe they aren't absolutely true. Maybe there's an edge you can find. It's too low down. You can do something about that. It's too noisy. You can do something about that too, within limits. So try to fix those things. Higher antenna above the roof line makes a dramatic difference, and again it helps both transmit and receive. Yeah, okay, this is one of my early efforts, and worked quite a lot of stuff with that 16 element tonner, and eventually worked out a way to get it another 10 feet higher on that same mast and be able to do the whole thing myself. But okay, above the roof line makes a tremendous difference. Lower noise antennas we've heard a lot about, but and about the difference between the horizontal and the vertical pattern. In terms of cutting out local noise, then a sharper vertical pattern is what you want, so that you see less of that close-in noisy stuff. That is not easy to achieve. One of Justin G0KSC's optimization secrets is to optimize the antenna for the cleanest possible vertical pattern, and he's quite right in saying that the horizontal pattern will take care of itself, pretty much. So that's worth doing. Reducing noise levels from within your own home, that's the obvious thing, which is just so inconvenient to go downstairs and pull the switch and run off a battery and then start plugging things in one by one. Time was, of course, when we had the monopoly of electronic equipment within our own homes. That ain't true anymore. Go portable. Lots of people are doing that for better locations and lower noise, away from the noise pollution that besets us all. And again, if you think that that living in a relatively remote part of Scotland means that my site is low noise in all directions, think again. Nearest neighbour is about 5 meters through the wall. Yeah. Next nearest neighbour is a farm with industrial machinery in there. Next two are domestic. Next after that is quite a long way away. Except for the cows, and when cows get electronic tags, I'm stuffed. Okay. So, and the other thing, at the end of this, know where you're going, know where you want to be headed on the journey, and okay, I've been planning for the next house move for well ever since the first house in the 1970s. I've always tried to include some element of this stuff. So yeah, remember that you're on a journey and plan where you would like to be. And if you're figuring this stuff into your decisions, then at least it gets a chance. You may decide the other way, but at least you've put it on the balance and weighed it. The next things, and okay, I must apologise for this next section. It's turned out that most of the people here are more experienced than I'd anticipated. But okay, aircraft scatter. A lot of us were taught that short range propagation out to about 500 kilometers is tropo. Yes, that is still as true as it ever was, but there is a lot more aluminium in the sky now. of commercial aircraft than there ever was when those books were written, and a great deal of the propagation that we enjoy over short to medium ranges is now aircraft assisted. And I think you noticed that on Tuesday evenings, that when sometime about 9:30, when the majority of aircraft have flown home to roost, then propagation is no longer as good as it was earlier in the evening. So be aware of that. Take control of it. Now what's happened? That was, yeah, okay. I'll skip over this slide of Air Scout. If you haven't heard of Air Scout, then find out about it, because this is the tool for taking control and being aware of, hey, there's an aircraft coming. Right, aircraft scatter, meteor scatter. I'm in the presence. We're all in the presence today of somebody who works meteor scatter every single day. Lynn GW8 JLY routinely makes 1,000 to 2,000 kilometer contacts, mainly on 2 meters. Routinely, again, is possible on 6 meters and 4 meters. If you're not doing it, look into it, because it's fun. And Europe is full of people who want to work you at any time. Oh, and so are some people in northern Scotland. Had to add that. Enhanced tropo and so on. You can't make it happen, but you can learn how to track the signs and be there, and how to use it to the best advantage when it does happen. Again, there's stuff on the internet that can help you tremendously. And okay, I think I'll wind it up very, very soon now and say that the ultimate test is small system EME, small system moonbands. But that only works for you if your whole station is working as it should. Then that is the final loop back test of absolutely everything. And if everything is working as it should, numbers of people have said there are lots and lots of people that you can work, not necessarily needing elevation, but that does help. So I don't know what's happened with the mouse button. Yeah. Okay, I'll wind it up there, John. It's gone a little bit differently than I expected, because you're all already too well educated.
But am I right? Thank you very much, Ian. Before we go into the thanking Ian is very kindly agreed to step in tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock to 11:15 in the morning to talk about 50 years of VHF DXing, because one of my speakers can't make it tomorrow morning because they're ill, and I've moved the talk on homebrew 23 SEM EME to 11:30 to 12:15. So a little rejiggle. It's on all of the slides that are up, but you'll have another chance at Ian tomorrow morning.
Well, yeah, okay, just one thing about it. Once again, it happens not to be a technical talk. It's what have you got on your laptop. And it's, I think the thing that I want to bring out of it is the sense that it's a journey. You don't have to have it all immediately, but it is good to know where you're going. So it's the same thing runs through both.
Okay, so we're running out of time. I'm going to not have any questions today. You can catch, well, we've got room for one. Who's going to bid for the question? No, right. As a maxim, testing your station on EME is really, really good. On 6 meters, it is a hard game of decibels, but it can be done. 4 meters is a bit easier. On 2 meters, if you have 100 watts and a 9 element, you can work people on EME. Many people try, but they can't hear the stations coming back although the stations coming back are running a kilowatt. That means that they haven't played the game of decibels.
Yeah, exactly.
And that is a really, really hard lesson to say through. On 70 sems, you need a little bit more. You need about 100 watts, and 2 Yagis will do the job on 70 sems. So that's the ultimate test at the end of it, but you have to play the game of decibels first. Anyway, perhaps you'd all like to thank Ian for another really good talk.
Thank you. Thank you. I enjoyed it.